10-step process. First, it's crucial that you are intentional with your footwork after you serve. Don't believe me? Here are 3 random clips of Ben serving from the even side of the court. Notice what he does as soon as he serves. He falls slightly into the court and then quickly takes 2 bounding steps backward to place himself slightly to the left of the center line. But he's not the only one who does this. Watch his opponent Federico. Ben and Fed are the top 2 singles players in the world, and they both do the exact same thing. On the odd side of the court, it's really simple. Ben falls forward a bit as he serves and then takes 1 small step backward to get split steps slightly to the left of the center line, and Federico does mostly the same thing. They both naturally fall into this position after they serve since they are already on that side of the court. Both players prefer to take their third shot with their forehand, so this allows them to do that by slightly shading to that side. Any ball hit to their right is a forehand, and if their opponent wants them to hit the more uncomfortable backhand third shot, then they have to return to this small area of the court, which is difficult to do. Even if their return is slightly to the left of center, they have the footwork to be able to quickly get to the left of the ball and still take a forehand drop. Here's the 10-step process for hitting the forehand drop exactly like Ben. Ben prefers to hit forehand drops, which is why the setup after the serve is so important. No matter where the ball is hit, the goal is to get it on the outside of his right foot. So if the ball is hit to the forehand side, Ben usually takes it with a more open stance with the right foot in front. If the ball is hit to the middle of the court, then the stance stays mostly open. And if the ball is hit closer to the backhand side, Ben will shuffle over and get into a closed stance. The exception for this are balls that are returned super deep. Given where Ben falls after his serve, if a ball is returned close to the back line, then he takes it with a closed stance, but it's always on the outside of his right foot and step 2 in front of his body. Usually the ball is slightly in front of his right knee if he's in an open stance, or his left knee if he's in a closed stance. Having the ball in this position allows him to hit the ball with full control and avoids getting jammed by the ball going close to his body. No matter what stance he is in, open or closed, the majority of his weight is on his right foot as he hits the ball. Very similar to returns, this allows him to push off of that foot and start approaching the net with his left foot. Of course, his approach depends on the quality of the drop, which we'll cover in a minute. The motion he uses before contact is super important. Let's break it down. The paddle starts around the right shoulder with both hands on it and then quickly goes down slightly behind his torso. The backswing is quite small because the drop is a controlled shot and does not require power. One thing I found super interesting is the angle of his paddle head. I was taught to keep it pointing straight down, but both Ben and Fed have it pointing down and to the right at the moment before contact. They tend to use more of the width of the paddle rather than the length to brush up the ball. During his backswing, his left arm is slightly raised and bent at around 90 degrees. This acts as a counterbalance and also guides the motion of the shot. Throughout the motion, you can see that Ben's wrist is locked into place. It's not flopping around or being used to whip like you might expect. So having a locked wrist means less chance for error and more stability. The follow-through motion is always low to high, and a really important thing to note is that he continues the motion up and to the right side of his head without ever using his wrist to change the direction of the paddle's face. This low to high motion is how he gets so much topspin on the drops, which is important to bring it back down into the court with enough margin to comfortably make it over the net. Keeping the paddle on the right side of his head ensures he's applying true topspin rather than side spin. Let's quickly cover the backhand technique, and then I'll show you where to aim and the key to knowing when to approach the net. Now, let me preface this by saying that Ben and Fed are the undisputed best singles players in the world, but I really don't think they have perfected the backhand drop like they have on their forehand, and that's probably why they both tend to shade to their backhand side. But let's break down the technique because there's still a lot to learn from it. Both players hit their backhand drops with a completely sideways paddle rather than letting the tip of the paddle go down. This is really interesting because it means that to generate topspin, the ball does not travel from the middle of the paddle towards the tip, it travels from the middle/top of the paddle back towards the handle. You'll notice at contact, the paddle head is actually slightly above the wrist rather than below. Now you might think this is because of their close stance and having to hit cross court, but you'll notice them doing the same thing when hitting down the line. On the backhand, they are both in more of a close stance with the left foot slightly outside of the right, meaning their feet aren't crossed over, and their right shoulder is facing the net. Ben's weight appears to be more evenly distributed on these shots, and instead of coming forward with his back foot, he'll do a slight shuffle step as he comes forward. His motion on the backhand is smaller than his forehand, with the backswing only going back as far as his knee or slightly behind before coming forward. The contact point is directly in front of the knee and they finish from low to high, except instead of finishing straight up their body, they finish across their body and over their shoulder. On all drops, their wrist is completely locked. It's worth noting that this is a relatively new shot for Ben, as he used to primarily hit backhand slice drops. On his slice, the paddle head is above the wrist is locked, and the weight is on the back foot. If he's in a slightly closed stance, then as he hits the ball, he skips forward just like on this new backhand topspin drop. If he's in an open stance, then he quickly reestablishes his right foot and moves forward with the left. I used to think that you should hit your drops to the far sideline, but after watching Ben and trying it in my own games, I realized that's not the case. Ben almost never misses a drop wide, and I'm convinced it's because he aims the drops 3/4 of the way between the middle and sideline. Not only is he less likely to miss a drop wide by aiming here, but he's also less likely to be victim to a well-timed Ernie. Additionally, he aims them pretty deep into the kitchen, with most of them bouncing around the kitchen line. He also gives plenty of margin over the net, meaning that he rarely misses into the net. This is the same on both the backhand and forehand sides. There are two different scenarios that might happen off a drop, and he responds differently depending on which one occurs. Obviously, he won't hit the perfect drop every time, and sometimes the ball goes higher than intended. When this happens, the opponent is usually taking it out of the air from above the net. In this case, Ben will get split stepped at the baseline, or at max 1 to 2 steps inside of the court, and he'll try to stay in the center of the court rather than shading towards one side. But even if the opponent does not take the ball out of the air and instead choose to let it bounce, Ben will recognize that his drop was high and take this same position. If he hits a good drop that the opponent is taking out of the air below the net or off a short hop, he comes forward to the middle and takes about 1 step towards the side the ball was hit. This allows him to defend shots down the line and also get to any cross-court shots. In either case, he is split-stepped and ready to explode in either direction before the next shot.